Well, good afternoon, everyone. It looks like our roster is filling in here quickly, and we're just a few minutes after 3 o'clock. So let's get this show going. Well, good afternoon again. My name is Mike Wilson. I am a senior planner here at MetroPlan Orlando, and want to welcome you all, especially the new faces, to our Vision Zero regional task force, and at the first meeting for this new group. For your new members, this group sort of got its start as the vulnerable users working group, a safety working group, and then when we received the federal highway grant for doing our Vision Zero plans, we sort of merged that or modified that working group into this new task force. So we have a number of existing members who've been working the safety angle, particularly on the non-motorist side of things. And now we are broadening that out to our Vision Zero scope. So welcome to all the new folks. And so to that end, why don't we just start off with introductions. And since we have so many names here, I will call on you all, since I've got a handy roster here. So let's starting off alphabetically by first name, Adam. And if you would just briefly give your name, which organization you are with, and what your role is with that organization.
Good afternoon, Adam Zabritsky, Orange County Public Schools Transportation Safety Manager.
Thank you, Adam. Courtney Gleaton.
Hi, Courtney Gleaton with Orlando Health Arnold Palmer Hospital for Children. I'm the injury prevention coordinator for our trauma program on the pediatric side.
Thank you. David Sevilla.
Hi, everyone. David Sevilla. I'm here mostly as a private citizen, but also happen to be on the public relations team at Walt Disney World.
Emily.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Emily Hanna. I'm the Executive Director of Bike Walk Central Florida.
Thank you, Emily. Aaron Stirk.
Hi, good afternoon, Aaron Stirk. I'm Transportation Manager with the City of St. Cloud.
And Jordan DeWitt.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jordan DeWitt. I am the Associate Director of Government Affairs at the Orlando Economic Partnership.
Great. Joshua.
Good afternoon. I'm Joshua DeVries, Director of Transportation Planning for Osceola County. And you may also have Isai joining under my name too, because he couldn't find the link, so he'll be joining as well with Osceola County.
Okay. Laura Hardwick.
Good afternoon. This is Laura Hardwick. I'm the Safe Mobility Manager for the City of Orlando.
Lauren Torres.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lauren. I am the Program Technical Advisor here at National Safety Council in the Roadway Program.
And Lorene.
Hi, good afternoon. Lorene Bobo with the Florida Department of Transportation here in District 5. I'm the Safety Administrator.
Lieutenant Crescenzi.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Lieutenant Crescenzi. I am the Florida Highway Patrol Troop D Public Affairs Officer. So that's counties in Orange, Osceola, Volusia, Brevard, Lake, and Seminole. And I also am responsible for the Florida Turnpike in the counties for Orange, Osceola, and Lake. And I also do all of our community outreach. Nice to meet everyone.
Great. All right, so that's everyone that I had. Well, I see Kelly Brock came in while we were doing introductions.
Hi, Kelly Brock, Public Works and Utilities Director for the City of Castleberry.
All right, and is there anyone else who is on the task force itself that I missed? Go ahead and jump right in.
I'm Cheryl Alderondo. I'm on the call also with Courtney. I'm from Orlando Health as well, and I do injury prevention for the trauma program for the adult side.
Great, thank you. Is that it? All righty. Well, won't we next go with the Metro Plan Orlando staff? Cynthia.
Hi, everybody. My name is Cynthia Lambert. I'm the Public Information Manager at Metro Plan Orlando, and glad to have you all here today.
And we have Lisa, who is running the show in the background here, making sure everything works. You want to say hi, Lisa? And she waved. Okay, Alex.
I'll be brief. Good afternoon, everyone. Alex Trauger. I'm the Director of Transportation Planning here at Metro Plan Orlando.
All right, and Adriana.
Good afternoon. I'm Adriana Rodriguez, Senior Transportation Engineer with Metro Plan Orlando. I'll be serving as the Program Manager for Vision Zero.
Thank you, Adriana. Eric.
Good afternoon, everyone. Eric Hill, Director of Transportation Systems Management and Operations at Metro Plan Orlando.
All right, and Jason.
Good afternoon, everyone. Jason Sartorio, Transportation Planner with Metro Plan Orlando.
Laura.
Hi, everyone. This is Laura Bauk. I'm a Senior Transportation Engineer and Project Manager, specifically with our TSMO team here at Metro Plan Orlando. And I'll be the Project Manager for our regional plan that we're doing for Seminole County. Happy to be here.
Marianne.
Hi, I'm Marianne Horn, and I am the Community Outreach Strategist at Metro Plan Orlando. Glad to be here.
Sarah.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sarah Larson. I'm a transportation planner with Metro Plan Orlando, and I will be working on some of the local municipalities.
And Slade.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Slade Downs, Transportation Planner here at Metro Plan Orlando.
And Taylor.
Hello, my name is Taylor Laurent, the Manager of Transportation Planning here at Metro Plan Orlando.
All right, and I should mention, although it looks like she dropped off, I don't think she's Rachel Frederick is another on our support
Yes, I'm here,
services
Mike.
team. Oh, there you are. Okay.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. I'm working alongside Lisa just to facilitate the meeting.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Rachel. All right, and I see one more name that came in, Miles with links. Give a quick hello.
Hey, everybody. I'm Miles O'Keefe. I'm the Manager of Strategic Planning here at Lynx.
Very good. Yeah, so we've got a big team here working this safety problem. So welcome to everybody. Just very briefly, particularly for those who are new to our process, because we are a public agency doing public business, we fall under the Florida Sunshine Laws. And that means that all of our business is open to the public. And what that also means is that for those of you who are on this task force, that you need to refrain from doing any sort of communications with other task force members outside of meetings. Anytime two or more task force members meet, that has to be a noticed meeting so that public knows what's being discussed at that meeting. So please keep that in mind. So with no further ado, I want to hand this over to Catherine Tellez, our lead on the regional plan for Fair and Peers. And Catherine's going to introduce her team and then give you the full picture of what this plan entails and what we'll be focusing on over the coming year.
Great. Thanks so much for that introduction. And wow, what an amazing task force. I think we're going to learn a lot from each other over this next sort of 6 to 9 month period. So I'm Catherine Tellez with Fair and Peers. I'm the consultant project manager here supporting MetroPlan. And I'll ask Christoph, Stephen, and PJ to introduce themselves real quick while I start the screen share.
Sure. Thanks, Catherine. Hi, everybody. Christoph Devasti. I am a senior transportation engineer with Fair and Peers in the Orlando office. I'll pass it over to Stephen.
Thank you, Christoph. I am Stephen Spana. Hello, everyone. I am a planner engineer in the Orlando office doing a lot of the crash analysis for this project. And to you, PJ.
Yeah, PJ Smith with X Geographic, and I'm on the Fair and Peers team.
Great, thanks so much. And hopefully everybody can see my screen. So just a quick reminder here, we have our meeting scheduled for 90 minutes today, and we have about 60 minutes of presentation content to get through. And then we've reserved the last portion of the meeting really for discussion and to get to know each other a little bit better. We'll also pause after each section to answer any clarifying questions, but ask that we hold any of those discussion items until the end, just so we can make sure we get through everything today. And then we also have a series of Mentimeter polls for you to provide feedback throughout the presentation. So please keep your phones or a separate screen handy. So we're actually going to get kicked off with a Mentimeter poll here. So feel free to pull out your phone or pull out a different screen, and you'll go to menti.com. So that's MENTI.com, and that's down there at the bottom of the screen. And then you'll type in the code 93151223. And for these Menti polls, we invite not only the task force, but anybody else who is on the call to participate as well. We all live in the region, we all experience the transportation system, and we really want to understand the collective thoughts. And there's a number of questions. So at this point, we ask that you just complete the first 3 questions, and then there'll be some question prompts throughout for you to get to the other ones. And looking here, it looks like we do have some responses coming through. So I'll leave this up on the screen for another 10 seconds or so, just so people can get logged in and then get started on the rest of the presentation. And then I'll share these results at the end as well during our discussion period. So we'll get started by looking at just some of the crash trends, and I'm sure none of this will be new to some of you on the call. So each year, over 1.3 million lives are lost globally from traffic crashes. And this is just an estimate and likely an undercount, as many countries do not keep really detailed crash records. And then a little closer to home, about 43,000 lives were lost in the United States in 2022 from traffic crashes. This was a 10% increase from 2021 and another 10% increase from 2020. So really we're seeing these double-digit increases year over year. And then more than 7,500 pedestrians are killed each year in traffic crashes in the United States. So this is about a 15% increase from 2020, the highest in 40 years. So really, want to throw in there too that the lifetime odds of dying in a traffic crash have now been calculated by the National Safety Council at 1 in 93. So those odds, those aren't really great odds. And when you think about it, the number of people killed on our roadways each year in the United States could fill about 115 Supermax planes. So when we think about just the sheer numbers of people, one life is too many, and this is really what we're seeing year over year. So just kind of taking a little step back, back to the 1970s. So, based on concerns with fatality on the transportation system, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration was established in 1970 in the newly established Department of Transportation. And over the decades, regulations and safety features such as seatbelts, collapsible steering columns, protective dashboards, shatterproof windshields, and other requirements such as crash testing led to really significant decreases year over year in fatalities. And especially when you looked at those fatalities at a vehicle miles of travel basis. And then in combination with safety campaigns such as Mothers Against Drunk Driving, we saw that significant decrease. And then in 2020 or 2010 or so, those absolute gains really started to decline. And we also were recognizing that a lot of the safety gains went to people inside of vehicles. And so while states were seeing the number of fatalities of people inside vehicles decreasing, the number of fatalities of those outside of vehicles has been increasing. So what about Florida? So these same trends were happening in Florida around the same time, with the increase in fatal crashes really outpacing population growth and growth in vehicle miles of travel. So since about 2009, we've seen an increase in fatalities on Florida roadways by about 48%, with an increase in population during that time frame of about only 15%. And then a little closer to home, this is something that unfortunately we read and see in the newspaper and other media venues all too often. So, between 2012 and 2022, over 731,000 crashes were reported in the Metro Plan Orlando region, resulting in over 25,000 serious injuries and 2,900 fatalities. And those fatal crash trends here locally have been on the rise, really outpacing population growth. And then over this period, about 18% of the fatalities were people on motorcycles. So this is compared to about 14% nationally and about 19% at the statewide level. And then about 27% of fatalities were people walking and 5% were people bicycling. So just want to note that overall, people walking and bicycling are a part of less than 2% of total crashes, yet they comprise about a third of the fatalities on our roadways. So parsing the data a little bit more and really just looking at the last 5 years, we saw over 1,360 fatal crashes, including almost 900 in Orange County, 290 in Osceola County, and about 183 in Seminole County. So, but given the different size and characteristics of each county, we really normalize the number of fatal crashes by population for comparison, which shows that the region has about 12 fatal crashes per 100,000 residents on an annual basis, with Orange and Osceola County being above the regional average and Seminole County being below the average. So as we dive deeper into the crash data, we'll identify more specific reasons for those differences, and we'd love to hear any hypotheses that you might have. We've also started to look at the fatalities by mode, as more than half the fatalities in the regional basis are considered vulnerable roadway users, so people outside of vehicles, and that includes pedestrians, bicyclists, motorcyclists, people on scooters and wheelchairs, so anybody without the protective casing of a vehicle around them. You may have also noticed in some of the crash trends a significant increase in fatal crashes during the pandemic period. And so there's been a number of hypotheses and studies put forth really looking at those trends and the reasons why. And fortunately, we're starting to see a slight decrease. But, some think, and the studies show the stress of COVID in the world has really changed driver behavior for the worse. We also note that seatbelt usage is down, not only here locally, but nationally as well. And then just excessive speeding occurred a lot during the pandemic, especially when roadways were empty. And so some of those habits are a little harder to break. And then when we look at the crash trends during COVID, the rate of fatal crashes actually increased by almost 30% on a vehicle miles of travel basis. So when we're looking at crash data from the last few years, we'll want to look at that through some of the COVID lenses, but it is still very important data for us to be looking at. So just pausing here to ask another question. The focus of our next meeting is really going to be looking detailed at the crash analysis, and we'll be pulling out a lot of the standard information to share with you, developing a high injury network. But we really want to understand if there are specific transportation safety questions that you would like us to be able to answer. Often we hear that, oh, it's all of the tourists that we have in this region, they're the ones contributing to all the crashes. And when we actually have looked at that data, that is not the case. And people visiting from other parts of the country and world are underrepresented in crash data. I'll also just pause here real quick, see if there's any initial questions, but understand we'll be doing a much deeper dive into all of the local crash data during our next meeting. Lauren?
Yeah, hi. I did have a quick question. I know you mentioned vulnerable users would include persons that have health conditions or impairments. Has there been any analysis on that, like a specific health impairment or health condition that contributes more to crashes? Is that something that's been like that?
That's not something that we have looked at, but we'll definitely add that to the list and see what data we're able to find.
Thank you.
Right, so we're going to pivot a little bit and start getting into sort of what is Vision Zero. And it looks like just a quick look here at some of the Menti results that a lot of you are already pretty familiar with Vision Zero and the safe system approach. So we'll be going through some of these sections pretty quickly. And for those of you who are less familiar, happy to answer any questions at the end and also share with you other resources that you might find interesting. So Vision Zero is a strategy to eliminate all traffic fatalities and severe injuries while increasing safety, health, and equitable mobility for all. And Vision Zero is different from other approaches to transportation safety as it reframes traffic deaths as preventable, acknowledges that we all make mistakes, focuses on fatal and severe injury crashes, aims to establish a safe system, and applies data-driven decision-making, as well as equity to the process. So just sort of stepping through some of the core principles here. So, you know, reframing traffic deaths as preventable. When we look at most crashes, they could have been prevented through a combination of factors, consisting of roadway design elements and user behaviors influenced partially by that design. It also integrates human failing into the approach. So understanding that we're not all perfect, sometimes we make mistakes. You know, how often do you misjudge the speed of an oncoming vehicle when you're making a turn? It focuses on preventing fatal and severe crashes rather than eliminating all crashes. So we'll never eliminate all crashes, but the goal of Vision Zero is to eliminate those crashes that result in death and severe injuries. It aims to establish safe systems, so rather than relying on individual responsibility. Our current transportation system is designed and operated assuming that everybody follows the rules, such as posted speed limits. And while the Vision Zero approach does not eliminate that individual responsibility, it does recognize that transportation system designers and operators have a responsibility to design and operate those systems that encourage the desired travel behavior. It also applies data to the decision-making process. In many communities, the most transportation safety complaints often come from neighborhoods with the lowest crash rates, or they're received to perceived safety issues and not actual safety issues. So really using that data to help us focus our efforts. And then finally, establishing road safety as a social equity issue. Many communities have found that a disproportionate number of fatal and severe injury crashes happen in communities of concern, where there typically has been an underinvestment in infrastructure. So while we've been working on transportation safety for many years, and as you saw, we have been making progress, but currently in the stalled position. Really, the five main differences are summarized here. Most of these we've already touched on, and the one new item is really that saving lives is not expensive. So the societal cost of a fatality is calculated at over $11 million. So we really can't afford not to improve transportation safety. And Vision Zero has been around for almost 30 years, first implemented in Sweden in the 1990s, and other countries have had a focused effort on reducing fatal and severe injury crashes, and they've seen some significant reductions in fatalities. And so we have a lot that we can learn from other countries, and while success has varied, there are other places in the world with significantly lower crash rates, and while there's definitely differences, there's a lot of similarities in terms of land use development patterns and auto usage as well. And then a little closer to home, there's a growing number of locations in the United States that are Vision Zero communities. And some of the early adopters, they saw much progress in their first few years, such as San Francisco. And then after a while, they started seeing those same plateaus. And so they're actually taking the step now of reevaluating what they're doing and doubling down on what's working and adding new strategies and then eliminating strategies that they're finding just aren't working. So as a part of our plan, we'll really want to make it flexible and dynamic so that we can change how we're approaching things if it's just not working. And then the Vision Zero network developed the core elements of Vision Zero in 2019 as a collaboration with the Institute of Transportation Engineers. And it was really all about establishing a national benchmark. So communities must commit to all 10 core elements to be called a Vision Zero community. There's no picking and choosing. Some of the earlier cities to adopt Vision Zero, some of their strategies were really watered down, and so they really couldn't be called Vision Zero communities. So there are sort of three main categories: leadership and commitment, safe speeds and safe roadways, and then a data-driven approach with transparency and accountability. So here under leadership and commitment, there's four main elements. So that public high-level ongoing commitment. So that's having Vision Zero resolutions and having public officials state their goals related to zero fatalities and serious injuries on our roadways. It's about having more authentic engagement and really talking to people who are most affected and have been underrepresented in the process in the past. Strategic planning, and then most important, project delivery, making sure that we're actually implementing projects. Under safe roadways and safe speeds, there's two main elements: the complete streets for all, and then context appropriate speeds. When we start looking at crash data, we really do see that connection between high speed roadways and fatal crash trends. And then under the data-driven approach, transparency and accountability, there's four main elements. So the equity-focused analysis and programs, proactive systemic planning, responsive hotspot planning, and then comprehensive evaluation and adjustment. So looking at the data and the trends every few years and understanding what's working, what's not working. And more information can be found on the Vision Zero Network website. And then later on in the project process, we will have an opportunity to benchmark the regional policies against these 10 core elements. And this will really help us identify new and updated safety policies. So there will be some opportunities during the project to have a much deeper dive on this. So pausing here for another poll question, just what you think are the biggest barriers to reaching zero traffic fatalities and serious injuries in our region? And then I'm going to hand things over to my colleague, Christoph, and he's going to do an overview of the safe system approach.
Thank you, Catherine. Do I have control of your slides?
You should.
Doesn't seem like it.
Okay.
Now I do.
Perfect.
All right. So a lot of what I'm going to talk about is a little bit repetitive from what Catherine said, but and I know a lot of you on this call are familiar with the safe system approach. But again, like Catherine mentioned, those that are not will have resources at the end that you can refer to get a little bit more familiar. So we know that 0 is our goal. How do we get there? And that is through the safe system approach. The safe system approach is a data-driven, holistic, and equitable method to roadway safety. It's really based on that ethical position that it's unacceptable for people to die or get seriously injured just for moving about the system. And there's 3 things that we just need to understand about the safe system approach. 1 is the approach itself. 2 are the 6 principles of the safe system approach. And lastly, the 5 elements, which I'll go over in the next couple of slides. So first, the approach. 1, as Catherine mentioned before, a safe system recognizes that people are going to make mistakes. And these mistakes are going to lead to crashes. And so we need to, all those that are involved in planning and maintaining and designing our systems need to plan a system that can accommodate these human mistakes and also keeping impacts on the human body at tolerable levels. So next we'll talk about the safe system principles. There's 6 of them. The first one is that death and serious injury is unacceptable. Going back to this number of 0 as being the only acceptable number for serious injury and death, and realizing that death and serious injury should not be a price to pay for mobility. The next one is that, again, going back to this concept of human fallibility, right? We know that humans are going to make mistakes and they're going to lead to crashes. And these crashes, making those mistakes, should really not constitute a death sentence. The next one is recognizing that our human bodies are vulnerable, right? We acknowledge that if we get hit with a heavy object traveling at a high speed, it will do damage. And so this is because of the kinetic energy that is dissipated through that crash. Realizing that it doesn't really take that much kinetic energy for serious injury to occur, especially when we're talking about children or older adults. So really thinking about the vulnerability of humans that are involved in these crashes. And then the next one is that responsibility is shared. So Catherine talked a little bit about this. Us as system users have a responsibility to follow the rules, right? To adopt safe behaviors. But the whole spectrum of everybody that has anything to do with the system is also part of that responsibility. So going up to the system managers all the way to vehicle manufacturers all have a role to play in adopting safe behavior and pushing the envelope and getting to 0. And the last one is that safety is the second to last one is that safety is proactive. Now, for a while, the way we've been approaching safety is that we looked at identifying crashes over the last 3 to 5 years and then reacting to those crashes when they occurred. And now we're understanding that we should not be waiting for those crashes to occur before we do something. So really identifying the risks that are leading to those serious crashes and then mitigating those risks. A good example of thinking about safety proactively is how we think about the placement of our transit stops, right? Should we be putting a crosswalk as soon as we plan a transit stop, or should we be thinking about the warrants after we've placed the transit stop? So really think about people that are going to be coming off the bus, they will need to cross. Should we be thinking about the warrant, or should we be proactive in identifying that risk and mitigating that risk before that crash happens? And then last but not least is that redundancy is critical. So this is going back to to what we refer to as the Swiss cheese model, understanding that we need different layers of redundancy to protect our users, right? And death and serious injury will only happen if all the layers fail. So really having those systems in place so that if one system fails, that the other 5 are 4 there to catch it. So now we'll talk a little bit about the 5 system elements, safe system elements. So the first one is road users. And we mentioned this a little bit. So no matter how we choose to travel, whether it's walking, biking, driving, or taking transit, it is our responsibility to take our safety into our own hands. So we need to adopt safe behavior by following the rules. And part of that requires us to act within the limits of roadway design. So what I mean by that is that we need to follow the guidance that is intended to protect the user, right? Understanding that sometimes changing our behavior depending on weather conditions or environmental conditions might be necessary. Next, we're talking about safe vehicles. So this is where we're thinking about leveraging technology to improve safety. First, thinking about active safety measures. So those are the measures that are there to reduce the probability of the crash occurring, right? So we're talking about lane departure warning systems, autonomous emergency braking systems, pedestrian and bicycle detection, those types of measures. And then we have the passive safety measures. Those are the ones that come into play after the crash has happened. So here we're talking about airbags and seat belts. But we need to recognize that while technology is a good tool to improve safety, it does not, it won't defy the laws of physics, right? Even an autonomous vehicle can't overcome the laws of inertia. So a vehicle of a certain weight traveling at a certain speed is still going to take a certain amount of distance to come to a complete stop. And so we need to recognize that even with the improvements in technology, the laws of physics still apply, and we still need to be cognizant of that. Next, we'll talk about safe speeds. So this concept of a safe speed is at the heart of the safe system approach, right? Because with speed comes the kinetic energy, and with that kinetic energy comes the potential for serious injury or death. So managing speeds is going to be important for us to manage that kinetic energy. Next, we're talking about the concept of safe road. So again, going back to this idea of preventing severe crashes and keeping impacts on the human body at tolerable levels. This is, of course, is an exercise in managing kinetic energy, which we'll talk about on the next slide. And the way we manage this kinetic energy is, one, by managing the distribution of the energy crash when this crash occurs. Again, managing speed and mass. So users and vehicles of different mass and traveling at different speeds should be separated. If we think about this, where you have a bicyclist and a vehicle sharing the same lane, this is something that can occur at lower speeds, but when you start going on into higher speeds, this is something that is definitely undesirable. And then lastly, modifying the crash angles. So the smaller the crash angle, typically would result in a lower severity in a crash. So if you think about it, a head-on is going to be more severe than a right angle crash, which would be typically more severe than a side swipe. And this is where roundabouts, we get the benefit of having roundabouts being safer than typical four-leg intersections, because the angle of the crash that occurs in a roundabout will typically be lower, and it'll be a side swipe versus a right angle crash. So the severity of the crash will typically be lower at the roundabout. And last but not least is through post-crash care. So we understand that response time, lowering response time can be the difference between life and death. So it's important for us to find ways to minimize that response time, either through preemption systems and other strategies, but really trying to minimize the response time for first responders and medical care on routes to hospitals, on trauma centers, and everything of the sorts, to make sure that we can minimize that response time and get people the help they need that are involved in a crash. So I'll end my section by saying that we all have a role to play in reaching zero. One, as being users of the system by adopting safe behaviors, but also a lot of us are planners, engineers, managers of the system, and all of us have a role to play, and that's probably the only way we are going to reach zero fatalities and serious injuries on our system. And with that, I will pass it back over to Catherine.
Great, thanks so much, Christoph. So we have another question here. So just wanting to understand how you might describe the roadway safety culture in your agency or community. And then we'll also just pause here to see if there's any quick questions of clarification. And again, for those of you who might be new to this, happy to provide some additional resources after the meeting. All right, let's see, I'm not seeing any hands raised. So now that we all have a general understanding of Vision Zero and the safe system approach and really what we're trying to accomplish through this project, kind of shift gears a little bit to talk more specifically about what we'll be doing as part of the Regional Vision Zero Action Plan and the various steps that are included. So we have these 7 primary tasks that are shown here on the screen. And we'll go through each one of them in a little bit more detail, just so you know what to expect and can then provide us with some feedback. So the first main one is really on that public engagement side. So we have a series of task force meetings. So again, we really appreciate all of you for your time and feedback. We'll also be sharing periodic updates to the various Metro Plan Orlando committees and boards. We're also in the process of developing what we're calling our hub site and safety dashboard. So this will be really a landing page for the project and include information intended for local agencies and the general public, as well as interactive maps with the high injury network and a host of crash data that can be filtered for each community, so folks can kind of do that deep dive and explore things. We're also working on putting together a safety champion speaker series. So this will allow for a deeper dive into some various safety topics that maybe we won't quite have the time to get into during various task force meetings. And so we're looking to bring in virtually those local and national subject matter experts that can maybe provide us more information on post-crash care or law enforcement or media training or victims advocacy. So we're still formulating that list of potential speakers and topics. And one of the next questions we'll be asking for if you have any ideas or suggestions on either topics or speakers. We're also planning for some online engagement with the public, really asking them some questions about transportation safety, and then also identifying locations in their community where they feel unsafe walking, biking, driving. We all experience those near misses that are not included in the crash data. So we're hoping that public feedback can help layer on some additional information that we don't quite see through the data. We're working on some communication toolkits. So this will be shared with all of the agency partners, and some items that will be included are a Vision Zero resolution template and a social media calendar and a host of other materials. And then towards the end of the project, Metro Plan Orlando is planning to host a safety summit where we can pull everything together in person and really start thinking about the implementation phase. So this here is a draft of the engagement schedule, and you can see we have a lot planned in the fall and winter. in anticipation of plan adoption before the next round of those Safe Streets for All grant applications. And so just want to highlight that for the regional plan, the engagement is primarily focused through the task force, the local agency partners, and then online public feedback strategies, while we expect a lot of that in-person engagement to happen at the county and local plan level. We're also working on the high injury network. So this is identifying roadways where most crashes occur. And so by focusing our efforts on those roadways, we can really make the biggest impact to safety. So for the regional network, we're looking at roadways that are on the federal aid network. And then for the county and local agencies, we're preparing high injury networks for each jurisdiction that include all roadways within those geographic boundaries, regardless of ownership, and then all roadways that are maintained and operated by that jurisdiction. So for example, for Orange County, we would have one network that includes all roadways, and then another network that includes just the county roadways. There'll likely be some overlap, and then Orange County and others preparing that plan can use that information in preparation of their own action plan. And so here on the screen, just showing a preliminary regional high injury network. And so we're showing that about 48% of all fatal and severe injury crashes in the region are occurring on about 4% of the roadway network. So you can see that by focusing our efforts on a small number of roadways, we can really make a huge difference. But even at that, the network can be quite large and overwhelming. So we're looking for this next iteration to identify some tiers of roadways so we can really identify those roadways for immediate focus. We also want to know more about the people involved in fatal and severe injury crashes, what the contributing factors are, such as speeding or alcohol, and what types of roadways their fatal and severe injury crashes are most prevalent, like 6-lane high-speed roadways. So again, we'd love to hear from you in terms of what additional information you might like to see out of the crash analysis so we can have that data pulled and ready to share. And then once we know where the biggest safety issues are and their causes, we'll work to identify safety improvements. We know there's a lot of improvements already planned on some of these roadways, so it might be an opportunity to identify additional safety enhancements, or if those planned improvement projects address the existing safety problems, then we can move on to the next roadway. And then measures may also include educational campaigns, like reminding people to wear their seatbelts, and targeted enforcement on corridors with known speeding problems and high crash rates. So overall, the countermeasures will include engineering countermeasures, such as signal timing, intersection modifications, improved crossing locations, as well as those non-engineering countermeasures. And there'll be some focused discussions with this group around what those countermeasure strategies might be. And then once we've identified all the projects, we'll need to prioritize them for next steps. So this task force will be instrumental in helping to not only refine the project program and strategy list, but also the prioritization criteria. And then ultimately, all of this work will be documented in an action plan, which will also identify those policy and process changes that might be needed at the regional level. And then we know that all of these county and local plans are being developed at the same time. We want to make sure that we're taking advantage not only of some of the economies of scale, we want to make sure that there's consistency between plans, as there might be some overlap in the various roadways. So there'll be some feedback loops throughout the regional, county, and local Vision Zero action plans, just so that all of the plans speak to each other. So really, what can you expect from the plan and Metro Plan Orlando's role? So really, it's a detailed assessment of transportation safety issues in the region. And we know a lot of this work has already been done by FDOT and Metro Plan and others, but really compiling it all in one location. And then the identification of those new feasible safety improvements to provide on the MPO network. And then upon adoption, these new safety projects will be incorporated into the 2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan for prioritization and regional funding allocations. And then Metro Plan Orlando is also aiming to submit an application either for supplemental planning or implementation funds in the next round of Safe Streets for All funding. And so feedback from this task force will help determine which projects are submitted and what type of grant the region might pursue, knowing that this next grant cycle will be highly competitive. And so we've touched briefly on the overall schedule. So just a few highlights here of what's to come. We have the crash analysis underway, and we'll be sharing more details of that at our next meeting in September. And then in the fall, we'll be looking at potential countermeasures and conducting a detailed policy review. And then in the winter and spring, really looking at those specific projects along the high injury network and the prioritization. So just make sure it's on your calendar. So September 19th for our next meeting. The other county and local agency plans are expected to all kick off within the next few weeks. We'll have the hub site ready to go around the time of our next task force meeting. And then we'll look forward to some of the next steps from there. So just another pause here for some feedback. Would love to hear any ideas you have on discussion topics or speakers for our sort of expert speaker lunchtime series. So these are intended to be hour-long presentations virtually sort of over lunchtime. So hopefully we can get a wide range of folks to attend. And then just any additional questions or comments that you might have. So while you're all providing some feedback, I'm going to hand it over to Mike in case there is any just general public comment out there before we get into discussion.
Actually, why don't we go ahead and just continue with the group discussion, and then after that we'll put out the request for public comment.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, well, at this point, really just wanted to open it up for discussion and any feedback from folks. So I'll stop sharing here in case folks wanted to turn on their camera. And then I can also pull up the Mentimeter poll results if folks were interested in seeing other people's feedback.
Laura Hardwick was asking if the lunch series is intended for the general public or for agency staff.
That's a great question. And I think we had talked about the target audience really being elected officials and agency staff. But I see no reason why it couldn't also be open to the public. So not sure if the task force has ideas or thoughts on that.
Hey, I asked that question because the ideas that first came to mind were more technical staff topics than general public, and then I wasn't sure if we were trying to target some more general education on safe systems with that. So I think my gut brought me towards some more technical staff, but there might be value in having a more generalized public discussion on it.
Kelly had his hand up for a minute ago. I don't know if you still had your question, Kelly.
Yeah, and I guess it's probably for Catherine. So your draft high injury network there, I'm pretty sure had a lot of state roads in it. So how are state roads where are they going to factor in to the plan? Because are we focusing on what we're ultimately submitting as implementation grants, are state roads eligible for that, or is it going to be more what the cities and counties actually have control over?
That's a great question, and that's why, you know, at the regional level, we're really looking at what's the federal aid network. But then for those county and local plans, we're preparing 2 networks. So one is just what are the roadways in your agency that have the highest or the most safety problems, and then which roadways do you have under your control? So then that way you kind of have 2 networks to pick and choose from. And then there's opportunities to partner with FDOT or the county on those types of roadways. So I think it really depends on each local jurisdiction and what their high injury network ends up looking like.
I see Aaron has a question.
Thank you, Mike. Just have a question. I know Maureen came to this group in its prior iteration and presented kind of the basket of safety options. I'm curious if this project will kind of try to rein that in as far as a Central Florida vision for consistent and repeatable engineering solutions on corridors where we can kind of whittle down things. I know at a local level, we intend to do that, maybe not even in our Vision Zero plan, but we have some funding set aside to do that in the future. Just curious if we're tackling that with this greater regional effort.
Yeah, great question. And, you know, I would say that regional consistency is very important. And I think too, one of the challenges is really there's a lot of potential improvements and strategies. So reining that into something that is manageable, that we can tackle at sort of the regional and then at the local level. And yeah, we'll be collaborating with Lorraine's team because I know FDOT is working on a safety action plan, and we don't want to duplicate efforts. We really want to help amplify each other and making sure that we're making the best use of the resources that we have.
Thank you.
We'll just take an opportunity to share some of the responses. So it seems like a lot of folks on the call have either been involved in a crash where somebody was injured, or they know somebody who's been seriously injured or killed. So and then, yeah, it's sort of the wide-ranging responses, and you know, as Mike and I and others have talked about it too, sort of the loss has spurred a passion for transportation safety and work in this field to make things safer for others. And yeah, that chronic pain and devastation. So really, we're trying to prevent this from happening to other people. So this was great feedback to see. And then it seems like most folks on the call have at least a general understanding, and some are an expert. So definitely looking forward to learning from you all. And if you do have additional resources that we should be considering or thinking about, please feel free to send them along to Mike, and we'll make sure that we're getting those incorporated into the analysis. And then, yeah, lots of great feedback here related to things to incorporate in the crash analysis. I like this comment here on the quick and inexpensive solutions. So I think we'll be looking at those sort of low cost, quick build type strategies. So these are things that can be implemented pretty quickly. And that means sort of within a 6 month to a year long period. And it could include things just, signal timing changes or some slight modifications, or perhaps it's a new marked crossing or a rectangular rapid flashing beacon. Some of those sort of quick short-term solutions can be highly effective, especially while we're waiting for some of the bigger solutions to be engineered and then constructed. Some of those can take many years. So appreciate all of this feedback, and we'll review all of it in detail and make sure we're incorporating it as best we can into the analysis. Got a lot of barriers here: inconsistent design, behavior, education. Yeah, development patterns, that's a big challenge. Let's see. Cynthia, I see you have your hand raised.
Yes, sorry to go back to one of the earlier questions on the Menti survey, but I'm kind of surprised at how many of you have been personally affected by crashes. And one of the things that we want to do on the communication side of this project is really tap into telling personal stories and being able to humanize these numbers. You heard a lot of numbers today, but these are more than just crashes and deaths. These are people who either their lives are changed forever or they've lost someone that they love and their lives will never be the same for it. So we're going to be collecting stories. So if you are willing to share, and we know that's not always an easy thing for folks to do who have been through a traumatic experience like this, but if you or someone you know are willing to share your story either in written form that we might be able to use, in maybe in the plan or in plan materials or social media posts, different newsletters, things like that, or even to go on video and share your story. We are working with a video company to pull together a short video just to kind of demonstrate what the need is. So either, you can speak up now or email me later or drop a note in the chat, but just know that we are looking for those personal stories. And we're setting up a collaboration with our partners at drivedownheartache.org to try and send folks to that site, which is run by safety advocate Melissa Wandel, if folks do want to share, to encourage them to share that way as well.
Great. David, I see your hand raised.
Thank you. Hey, Cynthia, I got that email. I think Marianne, sent the email out maybe a week or two ago about asking for these stories, and I actually started to reply back and draft my story, and I just couldn't do it. I'd love to talk to you offline a little bit more about how they're going to be used, because it's certainly a very personal thing. But if I could help others, I would love to. So I just wanted to mention that. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I know it's a very, we want to be really sensitive about how we're handling these stories, because we know they're very personal.
Thank you.
Emily?
Thanks, Catherine. To tag on to that conversation, I did want to bring up that we shared a webinar last week in our Bike Walk Weekly that talked about how to share your story. And I will try to find a link to that and share that with this group. But it was about how best you go about telling that, considering kind of the audience and how difficult sometimes those stories are to share. And that is something that we're encouraging our board members to do as well. And we are also pushing those stories to Melissa Wandel's website. So we will continue to share that message, at least through Bike Walk Central Florida. And like I said, there are some support resources out there on how best to tell that story, considering also, one of the things that our staff is looking into, and maybe this is something the group could assist with, and maybe this is a topic for the lunchtime series, but trauma responses and how to talk to people that have been impacted by traffic crashes. Because we are, roadway professionals, if you will, land use planners. We don't know how to have some of those sensitive conversations with people that have been, their lives have been truly upended and impacted by what is happening on our roadways. And I think, I know I would personally benefit from having some of this education and learning about how to just talk to people that have had that experience. So maybe something for the future, or something that we can try to find and share as well.
Great, thanks for that. I'll reach out to you for those links, Emily. Appreciate that. Other comments here? And then here's just sort of a word cloud of the roadway safety culture. So it seems like there's some mixed results. So in some locations, seems like it's a priority and pretty strong. Others need some improvement and can be inconsistent. So. Looks like we've got some great suggestions here for the lunch series. And if other things come to mind after the fact, please send them our way. We're kind of working through a list and identifying folks. Laura?
Hey, if you go back to the greatest barriers slide, I think I noticed the trend we have here on behaviors. And I think it's a good opportunity to double down on the safe systems approach. I think this has been our gut reaction for 50 years for traffic safety, that education will get us to zero. And we have a lot of evidence to show that we can't just educate our way out of it. We've got to have all components of the safe systems, that redundancy that Christoph talked about, as well as that trying to think of common sense, self-enforcing design and common sense traffic laws to reinforce safety. So I noticed that, and I thought it was a good opportunity to circle back to the safe systems. I think it's a big, it's something we have to constantly remind ourselves in this field, and probably throughout this safety action plan, that there's not a silver bullet for us.
Yeah, definitely not a silver bullet, and it will be a multi-pronged approach. There isn't a quick and easy solution. And then I love this one. Let's do it. So with that, I'll stop sharing my screen here just to see if other questions, comments, other things we should be considering. We've got a lot of work in front of us, and we want to make sure that we start really thinking about everything all encompassing and have the right resources.
I have one question, and it's about kind of the final document. Is there another region that has a fabulous plan like this that we are modeling ourselves after?
I mean, there's a lot of plans out there, and we've compiled a lot of them, and I would say we're unique, but we're not unique. So I would say we're going through probably about 15 different plans and kind of pulling out the things that we think are most relevant for our region. We don't want to reinvent the wheel, but again, we want to acknowledge sort of our unique characteristics.
Awesome, thank you.
And we're going to have the website as well, the hub site. So we've been looking at a number of metro areas around the country in terms of what to include, that kind of stuff.
And I would add that not very many places have done something to the scale that we have, where we have 3 counties and 20 municipalities doing it all together at the same time. So that's one thing that's going to be hard to find a good example for.
Yeah, and I will say a lot of the deliverables will either be sort of web map based or short and sweet. We know there's, nobody wants to read a 200-page report. So we'll make sure that things are streamlined, and we'll probably have some very boring technical memorandums for, myself and Mike to review and really make sure we're understanding things, but we'll create really a series of infographics and other things that are easily attainable for the general public. So as we're progressing, feedback on sort of how deep we should be going with things would be appreciated as well.
All right, well, if we don't have any additional member comments or discussion, we can move to our public comment. Catherine, if you want to bring that slide back up. Right, so if you are, whether you're listening on your phone or on your computer, you can use your raise hand feature if you're on the computer screen, or you can dial *9 on your phone if you would like to make a comment regarding the plan. And if you do, then if you come on, then just let us know your name and your address, and we'll have 2 minutes for you to make a comment. I see Denise has her hand raised.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for inviting me. I was unable to join in the other format, but just wanted to let you know that I was here in attendance, and thank you for sharing the information. Venice White, Florida Department of Health, Office of Minority Health.
Thank you, Venice. I did check you off as attending, so. All right. I'm not seeing any other requests for a comment. So if that is the case, then we can adjourn our meeting. Our next meeting is, let's see, I believe it's September.
I think it's September 19th.
September 19th, yes. Indeed, yes, September 19th is our next.
Are we looking at 3 p.m. also that day?
Yes, I believe so.
Will be the same time.
I'm sorry, what was that question, Cynthia?
I think it was the same as Josh's. Will it be at the same time?
Yes, yes.
I do have one other question. Is this group going to be doing homework in between meetings? And if so, how's that getting distributed and from whom? There's stuff you need from us as we kind of work through stuff?
Yeah, we weren't in. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, and not so much as a task force, but of course, many of you who are representing local governments, that's where you'll be the ones who have homework. But of course, that'll be as part of your own individual plan development, working with our consultants. But I can't think of, Catherine, do you have anything for the task members generally?
No, and sort of, we may send you materials to review in advance of the meeting. But we'll give you a heads up on those materials, but it shouldn't be too onerous.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I see a question from Emily, or a hand up from Emily.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. I have a conflict. I'm starting to get some conflicts on my calendar, and I have also have another teammate from Bike Walk that's going to step into these into these meetings for the next few months as well. So is there any way that we can get the calendar invites out for the whole rest of the year so that we can make sure that we're participating? Just because we're already starting to fill up.
I think we're at a stage where we can do that now. We're far enough along in our planning that we can, we've been going with the third Tuesday of the month approach, and we know generally what months we are targeting for task force meetings. So yes, we can get those out to you. All right. Well, if that's everything, then thank you all for your attendance and your participation. And we will see you next month.